Imagine the absolute worst-case scenario for a working democracy. The legislative branch is split right down the middle, and two different politicians are simultaneously claiming to be its rightful president. This actually happened in 1949. The Philippine Senate broke down completely, descending into a chaotic standoff that threatened to paralyze the entire government. At the center of the mess was Senate President Jose Avelino. Trying to fend off political rivals who wanted to oust him, Avelino simply refused to let the Senate do its job, intentionally delaying and freezing the proceedings. Frustrated by the blockade, a breakaway group of senators walked out. They held their own unofficial rump session and elected a new leader, Avelino Vs Cuenco. What resulted was a massive legal collision. An unofficial, physically separate session had just claimed the legitimate power of the Senate presidency. When the machinery of a democracy stalls, society generally expects one institution to act as the ultimate referee, the Supreme Court. Avelino knew this. He immediately filed a petition, asking the court to step in, strike down the rogue session, and declare Cuenco's election a violation of Senate rules. This put the justices in a dangerous trap. If they intervened, they'd be actively picking a winner in a bitter political fight. If they did nothing, the country would be stuck with a frozen legislature. But the court made a surprising choice. They stepped back completely, refusing to interpret the Senate's internal rules or declare a rightful winner. This restraint was a deliberate legal maneuver, a choice to protect the architecture of the government itself. To understand why, look at the separation of powers. The executive, legislative, and judicial branches are separate territories divided by strict boundaries. The judiciary's power to interpret the law stops at the legislative border. Avelino was demanding an incursion into the legislature's exclusive domain. There is a specific legal force field that blocks that kind of overreach. It's called the political question doctrine. A political question is any issue that the Constitution explicitly assigns to the discretion of the other branches, or directly to the voters. Courts are absolutely forbidden from touching them. The Supreme Court looked at the rump session and Cuenco's election and determined that picking the Senate's leader was an entirely internal political issue. By refusing to settle the lawmakers' dispute, the court didn't fail the system. They preserved its structural integrity by staying in their lane. Once the Supreme Court stepped away, the immediate crisis resolved itself. Cuenco successfully took power, and the Senate finally got back to work. The outcome is a fascinating paradox. By strictly doing nothing, the court effectively validated Cuenco's election, simply because they allowed the legislature's internal political maneuver to stand unopposed. Avelino versus Cuenco set a permanent boundary for judicial intervention in Philippine politics, turning a 1949 leadership dispute into a lasting constitutional blueprint. Imagine the alternative. If the courts were allowed to step in and micromanage every bitter political dispute, the power of the elected legislature would slowly erode away into the hands of unelected judges. The ruling establishes a hard line for a functioning democracy. A truly independent judiciary is not a safety net for politicians who fail to govern themselves. The separation of powers demands a difficult truth. Sometimes constitutional messes can't be fixed by the law. They require purely political solutions.